It's trip planning season, and I thought that I would put together a quick FAQ episode because I've been looking at the back end of my website to see which questions people are plunking into Google in order to land on my website. And the questions are pretty much the same. After I did that, I did an even deeper dive into Google Analytics to really figure out exactly which questions people were asking. Now, these are questions that people are also asking on online forums, but pretty much across the board, from Facebook to Reddit to Google, people seem to be asking the same questions. And more often, people are using ChatGPT in order to ask these questions as well. So I thought I would put together this quick video episode. I also got some new glasses, so I figure I'd give those a test run and answer your burning questions. Now, before we get started, I just want to say and acknowledge all of you who keep saying the same thing to me, which is, I usually can plan trips on my own, no problem. I don't understand why this Italy trip in particular is so difficult. And I just want to say this is completely normal. There are so many resources, and because Italy has exploded in popularity, it has also exploded with options and also a lot of influencers who have no idea what they're talking about. So many of the people in this industry who sell travel have only been to these locations once, and they have a hot take on it that very often doesn't line up with reality, or it lines up with a very specific reality. And that's the other thing that I'm really hearing this year more than ever before, which is I'm dying to go to Italy, but I have zero interest in the Italy that I'm seeing on TikTok and Instagram. It's a real country, and I actually want to go visit that real country. So let's get started with our FAQ. Number one question, and I'm scrolling through my Google Doc so that I can look at it right now. What to wear in Italy? Over 50% of the questions are related to what to wear, and it's related to the seasons, the time of year, how do you cross seasons, how do you cross weather, and also there are terms like cute church outfits and capsule wardrobe Italy. So here is my best advice on what to wear in Italy. Keep it simple. When I travel, I go for a pretty long period of time, a month minimum, sometimes more. And I'm usually traveling to several different locations, and I might also be transcending seasons. Very frequently, I'm going from summer weather to fall weather, and sometimes by the end of my trip, like this past November, I was freezing cold and I needed a puffy jacket. So here's my best advice on this. Now, I travel to Italy several times a year, and I usually stay for more than a month minimum on each trip. And I have found that whether you are going for 10 days or 2 months, the ideal suitcase is the one that is one size up from carry-on only. And if you need 2 sizes up from carry-on only and you're packing just for yourself, you're not also packing for your children, you are bringing too much stuff. What you want to do is keep it simple. Leave behind the maxi dresses, leave behind the t-shirts with team sports on them. Bring black, bring white, bring jeans, bring a sweater for a pop of color, bring a scarf for a pop of color, bring one decent dress, something that doesn't require a strapless bra or anything too complicated. If you're worried about traveling with white, white's actually great because you can have a little bit of bleach and wash it out in the sink. I'm also a huge fan of those Tide pens, which you can carry in your bag very easily and blot away, any like red sauce that you splash on yourself. I do that all the time. Still, there's nothing as useful as a good quality white shirt, a white button-down shirt that you can leave open, that you can put over your shoulders, that you can tie around your waist, or that you can button up very nicely and tuck in. Just bring simple colors, bring nice, durable, comfortable fabrics, bring a nice belt if you want to dress things up a little bit, and also keep your shoes simple. I usually travel either with a pair of ballet flats or loafers, something really comfortable for walking, and then a pair of cute sneakers. The term these days for things like sambas are rich mom sneakers. I'm a big fan of rich mom sneakers. The weather is also going to depend on where you are. I spend most of my time on the Cilento coast, and in the middle of the day, even in October or November, it could be blazing hot when the sun is out. But in the night, it could be quite chilly, so you always want to have some sort of a jacket. What I like to do is wear a blazer, something that can be dressed up or down, and something that I can also wear as a jacket. I like the brands Paige, I like AYR, I like Frank and Eileen for these basics. Some of these things might seem a little bit pricey, but they're very good quality And they're very simple, so you could also look at those websites and then find other brands that are more affordable to match the kinds of things that they have. Now for men, it's really easy. Don't wear the big team t-shirts, okay? You just don't want every photograph of you in front of the Coliseum or on a gondola to feature the Philadelphia Eagles logo. They just won the Super Bowl, so that's the example that I'm going to use. But in photographs, those logos really stand out. And this also kind of leads me into the second part of this question, which is, how do I not stand out as an obvious tourist? I actually find that men more frequently ask me, how do I not look like the tourist? It's so easy for men. Italian men dress very nicely, but it's not complicated. The secret? A button-down shirt. And they wear a lot of blue, a lot of navy blue in particular, or light blue, but it makes them look great. So just like a simple one of those no iron shirts that can be tucked in or tucked out, and you could wear those with a pair of shorts and a belt or a pair of jeans, that's how you look like an Italian. They just wear shirts with buttons way more frequently than Americans. Now for women, if you don't want to stand out as an obvious tourist, leave the athleisure at home. Italian women do not wear leggings and yoga pants around unless they are coming from yoga. So when you travel a lot like I do, you do get an interesting perspective on cultures, especially your own. So one thing I've realized about Americans is we prize comfort above all things, and we are very, very worried about being too hot. Especially American men are so eager to wear shorts, it's almost a little bit strange. Now, on the contrary, Italians are terrified of being cold. If you want to see an Italian abroad, look for the person who's wearing a scarf wrapped around their neck in 90-degree weather. That person could be French, but most likely they're Italian. But in general, don't wear big stretched out shirts, don't wear leggings, prioritize shirts with buttons, keep it simple, wear a belt, have a sweater that you can drape over your shoulders for a pop of color or to keep warm, choose a blazer that can be used as a jacket, and don't overpack. And one last thing, and this is a bit of a hot take, the maxi dresses. The number one thing that women wear that make them stand out as obvious tourists are maxi dresses, especially in Rome or Florence. Leave those things home. Now, I always do travel with one dress, something that I can dress up or down, but it's always monochromatic. You will so frequently see, especially young American women, in long flowery dresses, but the reality of wearing that dress in a hot city is very different than the idea you have in your head when you're shopping for it and packing it into your suitcase. Now, you might be thinking, I'm on vacation. I want to take nice pictures of myself. I'm going to be having a spritz in the piazza with my beloved. This really fits. The maxi dress fits with this vision of Italy that I have in my head. The thing is, the strapless bra, the thigh chafage, it just really makes you stand out. It makes you look like you watched a little too much Lizzie McGuire. The dress that you would wear to go out to dinner in Rome or Florence is exactly the same dress that you should wear in New York City or Chicago. In general, just keep it simple. Oh, and one last thing for teenagers. Italian kids do not wear their pajamas out, and they do not wear Ugg slippers in public. In fact, wearing slippers in public to them is disgusting. And they're correct. Don't wear Ugg slippers on your trip to Italy. Also, you want to leave room in your suitcase for some shopping. You know, we have a lot of the same stores like Zara and H&M, but you will also find some uniquely Italian brands. So leave room in your suitcase to buy something unique. Question number 2, how much Italian should I learn ahead of time? Although it is completely unnecessary, as much as possible. And that's because you'll just have a better experience the more that you understand and the more that you feel comfortable asking simple questions. Knowing how to say right and left and where is the bathroom, you'll be shocked at how much easier this will make your experience. Now, we are very fortunate as English speakers that English is the language of tourism. You will see Spanish and Korean tourists asking questions in English of the Italian service workers. And so speaking English is absolutely fine. But of course, like any place, the deeper you get into the culture, even with the exchange of simple phrases, is going to make your experience richer. Now, there are a lot of podcasters and influencers out there who have an affiliate link with Babbel, I don't. Maybe I should get one and make some money, but I actually legitimately think that it's a very, very good program to use for learning basic phrases. I do not recommend Duolingo, and there's plenty already online to explain why Duolingo doesn't really teach you how to speak. It doesn't make the translation from the game that's on your phone to real life. And also now they're using complete AI models as their translation services, which are often inaccurate. It's getting better every day, and it's going to occupy a larger and larger place in our lives. But right now there's a lot of stuff that's just really not very good, and you're not going to know that it's not very good. Next question, how much does a trip to Italy cost? Now, this is a really tricky question, and there's no standard answer because, of course, you could go camping, or you could do a vacation where you stay in 5-star hotels and you spend $3,000 to $5,000 a night. Now, here's the problem. 99% of you are going to say, well, I don't need to eat at a fancy restaurant every night, and I just want to stay in a hotel that's clean and central and comfortable. How much does that cost? And again, it's an impossible question to answer because it's going to depend on what time of year you're going and which part of Italy that you're visiting. So for example, basic one, Venice is way more expensive than Sicily, except if you're talking about Taormina, because that's where the cruise ships come in and that's where the White Lotus was filmed. So that one city will be way more expensive than the rest of Sicily. So this is how you deal with it. Come up with an overall budget that makes sense to you. What can you afford to spend? And then you can work backwards. Now, don't try to spend the same amount of money on every night. Don't try to come up with a daily average. Instead, you want to prioritize your experiences and look at your budget like a puzzle piece. These are not budgets, but they are baselines for you to form your thinking. And maybe to just wait and save a little bit more if you're not there yet. For a couple who is traveling for 10 days, you need a minimum of $5,000. And this is excluding flights. Now, if you intend on going to Florence, Venice, Rome, Amalfi Coast, bring that up to a minimum of $10,000, ideally $15,000. And I would say this year, 2025, is particularly expensive because of the Jubilee in Rome. Rome is getting an additional 70,000 visitors per week. And they're not all staying in Rome. In fact, it's Florence where we have seen the prices shoot up the most. Now, of course, I can't tell you what's going to happen next year. There's a lot going on in the world. But I don't anticipate that prices are going to be as high next year as they are in 2025. But hey, don't quote me on that. After COVID, I'm not making any predictions. Now, the reason I want you to come up with an overall budget is I want you, number one, to feel comfortable spending the amount of money that you have designated for your trip. There is nothing worse than feeling like you are stretching yourself, and then if you wind up having a bad experience or a bad meal or a train strike, it's going to be 10 times more stressful. So start with the number that's most comfortable for you. Now, I also know that many people find it uncomfortable to discuss these things, even with their partner. They don't necessarily want to face one number, and sometimes there's one person in a couple who really wants to take the trip, another person who's very concerned about price, and somehow saying what that number is out loud can kind of ruin the whole thing. But it's going to make your experience so much better. I'm going to share an example that I've shared before, but I think it really works. There is a tour of the Vatican that starts at 6 a.m. and it's just you and 19 other people, a group of 20 people in the Vatican Museum, and most especially in the Sistine Chapel. For me, an art history nerd, this was incredible. One of the best experiences of my life. This cost $500 for one person, and the price has gone up since then. Now, if you had told me to go spend $500 on a tour, I would say, are you nuts? But for me, with my interests and my background and all that I've studied about, but for me, with all of my interests and having studied art history, being inside the Sistine Chapel at that time of the morning with just a few other people was one of the most extraordinary things I could ever imagine. And so it was worth the money. And I spent a lot less money on the other 3 days that I was in Rome. I ate mostly pizza at Roscioli, which is actually an amazing thing. But I decided to put the money that I had in my budget mostly into that experience. And that's how you create a really magical trip to Italy. You prioritize experience, you spend money on the things that you most care about, and then you can minimize other expenses to offset them. Now, if you go to a more standard travel agency that sells set itineraries where all of the tours are booked via Viator, you will have a more standard set of pricing. So you'll have, here's the economy class version, here's the version of the trip with the heated seats. And so you could buy one of those trips, and there's nothing wrong with one of those trips. However, I would say those are not where you're going to get the more authentic experience of Italy. That's where you're going to get more of the bucket list experience of Italy. It may be more cost effective, it may cut down on confusion, but it's not going to get you deep into the real country. And that's probably not why you're listening to this podcast. But I do want to acknowledge that because that is a huge piece of the travel market, and it's something that you'll find. All right, question number 3. How safe is Italy? Answer is easy on this one. Extremely safe. Now, of course, in any city, you've got pickpockets, there's petty crimes, there's car break-ins. But if you're worried about crime overall and you live in the United States, crime in Italy is an absolute joke. It is a very, very safe country. And the one thing that you might feel, though, is that you lack context. If you walk down a dark alley in the city where you live, you know what to expect, you know what the threats are, and of course you don't know what those are in Italy. But overall, the crime statistics are very low. There is almost no gun violence, and it is an essentially hospitable culture, so I don't think safety is one of the things that should be on your list of things to worry about. Watch your bag, watch your wallet as you would in any city in the world, but really don't worry about it. Next question. Which is the best time of year to go to Italy? And the answer to that really depends on where you want to go. If you want to do the standard Venice, Florence, Rome trip, then go in the off season. Go in November, go in early December, go in February, because these are cities that you don't visit for the weather. If you're going to these cities, it's going to be about restaurants, museums, and sites. I'm getting a little frustrated with people who say that they want to go to Italy, but they have zero interest in museums or churches. Trust me, the museums and the churches in Italy are not like they are in the United States. Also, if you have no interest in culture to the point that you're proud of it, don't go to Italy. It's going to be a waste of your time and money. Now, if you only have the summer to travel, you're just going to have to accept that those locations are going to be hot and crowded and full of tourists. And that's fine if you know what you want to see, and you'll make the best of it, of course. If you want to do the Amalfi Coast or the Cinque Terre, early spring is probably the best time to go to avoid the crowds. And the weather could be iffy, but you could also wind up having some spectacular weather. The late fall is also nice. The cruise ship schedule slows down, and here's a cool little trick. The very last week of October on the Amalfi Coast, you can usually stay in one of the 5-star hotels for almost half the price. Now, a lot of the beach clubs close and not all of the services are available because the Amalfi Coast completely shuts down on November 1st. But still, to stay in one of those amazing hotels for a really good price, that's a cool opportunity. The November 1st also applies to the Dolomites and to Puglia. These places that are tourism intensive have people that are working 7 days a week, really from April till the end of October. And November 1st is when they shut down, people take a rest, they clean out the places, they do their accounting, and then sometimes things will reopen again for the holidays, and then again in the spring. So if you want to go to the Amalfi Coast in the winter, for example, most things will be closed. But if you're really interested in hiking and exploring small villages where the Italians actually live, not Positano, then that also could be a good time. But it's going to be a different kind of a trip. Of course, the fall is a beautiful time to travel. A lot of people go in the fall hoping to visit the sagre, which are the food festivals. And there are definitely sagre in the fall, but the very best ones happen in August, and especially in southern Italy. The thing about these local food festivals is they are produced by and put on for other Italians. They're not done for the tourists. So you need to go to the places where Italians go on vacation. So for example, the Cilento coast, in the summer there are lots of small towns in the mountains that have different food festivals because Italians are vacationing there, or Italians who might be from there will be home visiting in August. That's a really fabulous time to visit some of the small towns in Italy, especially on the coast. If you are very heat sensitive and you only have the summertime to travel, the best thing you can do is prioritize a coastal experience where you can be in the water during the day and experience the cool breezes at night. The worst place you can go in the summer if you are heat sensitive is Tuscany. It's like being inside of a hot terracotta bowl. And even if you check with the hotel that you're staying at to make sure their air conditioning is good, it's not going to matter. During the day, it is incredibly hot. Now, Tuscany does have a coast, but most of the places that people want to see when they're visiting Tuscany, those sort of golden rolling hills and cypress trees, those are in landlocked places, and it is extremely hot. Let's move on. Moving on, there are tons of searches for prettiest part of Italy, best hidden places in Italy, hidden gems, off the radar, off the beaten path Italy, and authentic Italy. And here the answers are abundant. Basically, all the places that you haven't heard that much about are the places that you should be going. And honestly, I would prioritize those no matter what. So I would say Sicily, except for Taormina, which yes, it's beautiful, but I think the cruise ships have ruined it. Other places that I love, Le Marche, Abruzzo, and Liguria, but not the Cinque Terre, the towns that are just north of it. Torino, Turin, is an amazing city. Don't sleep on Milan. I love Milan. Places I'm not that thrilled about right now? Tuscany? I know I'm like a war criminal for saying that. I went to graduate school in Florence. I love Tuscany. I have many friends and many colleagues there. But if you're looking for authentic Italy, Tuscany is getting really difficult and really expensive for that experience. And so I would rather have you go to Umbria or Le Marche. How much cash should I bring? So here's what I do. I take out 300 euros in cash at the ATM when I arrive, and then I replenish as needed. You can use your credit card for pretty much everything. You've got tap and pay everywhere. Even to get into the bathroom in the Naples train station, you have to pay, and it's worth it because it's actually very clean, but tap and pay. You can tap and pay to get on most metro systems as well. So cash is for gelato, coffee. If you're taking a taxi, a white metered taxi inside of a city, it's just much, much easier to have cash. And then replenish as needed. There are bank ATM machines everywhere, even in the smallest villages. Go take out 300 euros at a time, and I think you're good. You can also get euros from your bank ahead of time if it makes you feel more comfortable, but using the ATM machine in Italy is exactly the same as using it here. Now, one thing that's important is to make sure that you're using a credit card and not a debit card. And that's because not all debit cards will refund you if your card gets skimmed or stolen. And right now, I'm looking at you, Chase Bank. Yes, you, Chase Bank, that when my business debit card got skimmed of over $1,200, you let me know that even though it was marked with a Visa, that debit card purchases were not protected. So I was very happy to end my relationship with Chase Bank and to tell you to make sure that you're using a credit card, not a debit card. Now, also make sure that your credit card doesn't charge you any foreign transaction fees, because otherwise, every time you run that credit card, you're going to be charged a little bit extra. But there are plenty of credit cards out there that don't charge that. Just take a look ahead of time to make sure you've got the right one. And also, this may be an obvious point, but people do ask, can I use American cash in Italy? No, absolutely not. It's not like Mexico or South America. You absolutely need to convert your money to euros. What about my gluten-free diet? Well, Italy is like the capital of gluten. However, it's also the world capital of research into celiac disease because a lot of Italians have it. So there is always a gluten-free pasta option. Now, it may not be the same shape. So here's the thing to anticipate with a gluten-free diet. Don't expect to have the exact meal replicated. So if the dish says it has fusilli pasta, maybe they're going to give you rigatoni because they don't stock all the different pasta shapes in a gluten-free variety. That said, it's very easy to order non-pasta. There's almost always a risotto dish, which is rice, and there's always going to be meat and fish and vegetables. Now, if you're a pescatarian, I would definitely recommend traveling in the south where the diet is so heavy on seafood and vegetables, you will hardly feel like you're missing anything. In general, northern Italy tends to be more meat heavy, and southern Italy tends to be more fish and vegetable heavy. Gluten-free pizza is definitely available in Italy. It may not be available at every single pizzeria, but there are definitely many pizzerias that have some sort of a gluten-free pizza. Now, if you have very serious allergies, what you should do is use Google Translate to describe your allergies, print them out on a card, and laminate them. And then you can always hand it to the restaurant server so that they can be sure that they've gotten everything right and they can share it with the chef. So I would write it on one side in English and translate it into Italian on the other. Keep it with you, and that's going to cut down on a lot of stress for you and the restaurant staff. This is one of my favorite questions. Why don't Italians drink water? And this is a really funny thing because Italians will ask me, they'll say, Danielle, why are Americans so thirsty? And in the United States, we definitely have this culture of drinking a ton of water. Of course, those big Stanley cups are an artifact of that. And think about it. If you're not feeling well and you say it to somebody, the first thing they're going to tell you is, well, make sure you drink a lot of water. Now, Italians will just pour themselves a little glass of water at home, knock it back, and feel totally refreshed. So there are a couple of things going on. One is that Americans are obsessed with drinking a lot of water. It's our thing. And the merits of that are debatable. We're not going to get into that argument now. But the other thing is that Italians drink mineral water. You may remember in episode 13 about spas that I said there are 37 active and dormant volcanoes on the Italian peninsula. And so that means there are natural mineral springs throughout the country. And those mineral waters have a lot more salt in them. So I think Italians are actually better hydrated by the quality of the water that they drink. I'm not a scientist. If you are and you want to weigh in on this, please send me an email, but that's my theory. Now, I hope you have found these answers useful. As I mentioned, these are the questions that people are putting into Google. These are the most popular and frequently asked questions, and so you probably have them in mind as well. Now, if you're planning your own trip to Italy and you want some advice, here are the ways that I can help you. One is that you can join our subscriber community on Substack. There is a chat feature where you can always plunk in a question and I will answer it as soon as I see it. Also, anybody else in the community can respond. We also have a monthly Zoom call. This month it's on February 18th at 8 p.m. Now, even if you can't attend, that time doesn't line up for you, send me your question via email. I will answer it live on the Zoom, and then the following day, I send out the replay to all of our subscribers. Now, if you want to talk about your trip and your trip only, you can book a trip consultation with me. It's 1 hour on Zoom, and we get into the weeds and we figure everything out. And you would be surprised how much we can get done. I do this all day and every day. So there are questions that are jamming you up and tying you up for weeks that I can answer in a minute. And this includes restaurants, sites, tour guides, transportation. We can also have a deep existential chat and figure it all out. These sessions are very productive. I make sure that you walk away with all of the answers that you need, and you can also email me afterwards to follow up on any other details that are unresolved or need some extra refinement. At the end of the consultation, I will send you a recording of the Zoom session so that you can go back to it if you forgot anything, and I will send you a document full of all of the resources that we discussed. Now, before we go, I want to address the elephant in the room about traveling abroad as Americans this year. American politics are very controversial right now, and we all have to face them, and I don't care which side of the political aisle you stand on. We all need to grow up, myself included, and we have to be willing to have hard conversations if we're confronted with them, and we should do so in a respectful way. People have strong feelings about what's going on. You can always politely sidestep a conversation about politics in Italy and just say that you prefer not to discuss the matter. Italians practice la bella figura, which is keeping a good posture, keeping things polite, especially if food is on the table, to not be divisive or make people feel uncomfortable. But if you're confronted with a question and you're willing to have a conversation, just of course remember you are a guest in another country and engage respectfully. Now, of course, if somebody is obviously disrespectful, that's another case. I was in a situation 2 years ago where a taxi driver was confronting me with all of these conspiracy theories about the Illuminati and the United States, and a lot of the conversation became very anti-Semitic. And I had no problem telling him that I thought he was incorrect about all of these things and that the conversation was over. I did so in a firm voice. Now, there are other conversations I've had with Italians where people have brought up topics that I didn't agree with. And I was able to share my opinion in a respectful way, and we were able to have a conversation. It's an Italian stereotype that Italians seem to yell and be combative in a way that Americans are often uncomfortable with. But I have learned a lot from Italians about having difficult conversations and still being able to sit down and love each other and enjoy a good plate of food at the end of it. I hope you have found this Q&A useful. Thank you so much for joining me.